Welcome back, everybody. I'm delighted for our next session, which is on aligning growth opportunities. I won't go in and ask everyone to give a quick background about themselves because we have a really insightful, packed session. So we're going to get straight into the questions. We have Jarrad Linzie from JP Morgan, we have Rudy Ceres from Dunnington, Bartholomew Miller, and we have Reshma Ramachandran from the Adecco Group. The first question, and I'm going to direct it towards Jarrad, is how do you typically identify the best opportunities for your career growth?
Well, let me start off by saying thank you, Dennis, for inviting me here, and I'm happy to kind of give as much feedback as possible. And I'm actually here to learn as well, right? Because I'm still progressing along my career. So always to hear other individuals talk about careers and journeys is always going to be impactful for me. But to kind of break that question down, there's a couple of segments that I would say is really important. And I think, understanding growth opportunities starts with one thing, is self-reflection. If you can't self-reflect, there's no pathway forward, right? When I go in and write my year-end assessments, it's typically 2/3 on the opportunities and growth and what I need to do better as opposed to what I already do well. Everyone, that's what I get paid for. We all know what I do well, but it's really about understanding how to grow as an individual. So I think self-reflection is extremely critical to understanding, opportunities. Secondly, I would say willingness to absorb feedback. Myself and a lot of my career when I was younger, I didn't have a mentor. I came from a very humble background, growing up in the projects, had a chip on my shoulder, very defensive by nature, and closed off, right? I had a lot of individuals that didn't know how to manage that. So what would happen is, you get feedback, keep doing the same thing, keep doing the same thing. And that's not the right thing to kind of give. That's not the right advice to give. And as soon as I was able to open up a little bit more and take on the feedback, and I would say all feedback isn't great, right? All feedback may not be aligned to you, but at the very least, individuals feeling comfortable to give you that feedback, you can now take bits and pieces and really connect the dots and see what really sits and resonates with that specific individual. And then lastly, it's always about stepping outside of your comfort zone, right? If you're not willing to do that, if you're not willing to take chances, if you're not willing to have passion for what you're doing moving forward, growth opportunities, you're never going to really kind of align yourself to, because you'll just continue to do the same thing over and over. And I will keep it there because I know we have a lot of questions to kind of go through.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned growth opportunities and creating them. Reshma, what are your thoughts on how to create these openings for growth opportunities?
Yeah, and I think you thank you for saying that it's really creating it, because I don't think personally my own experience has been that there is no perfect job, there is no perfect growth job, so to say. It's about how do you convert those opportunities into something that works for you. So for me, I grew up in India, and to Jarrad's point, extremely humble background, and not having lived in the West and having moved to the Western world 20 years back, there were a lot of things that I needed to learn in that sense. So it was more about looking at each of those opportunities to say, okay, how can I convert this into something that I would like myself to be? And to Jarrad's point, do you have mentors? Do you know what you want? I think this is the biggest challenge that most of us face in terms of what do we want to do with ourselves. And it's good to actually have that. Again, Jarrad, I'm piggybacking on a lot of things that you said. It's good to have that self-reflection, to actually ask yourself, what would you like to do with not only with your career, so to say, but as your whole self, because we all want to be our whole selves at work. And then converting each of those opportunities into something that works for you. And I would say, again, going back on the comfort zone part, this is something that I have lived in 13 countries. And every time I have made a move to another country, it was literally getting out of the comfort zone. I live in Switzerland today. German is not my mother tongue. I had to pick up German as a language just to get by, employment opportunities aside, German as a language just to get by the normal daily life, just to buy groceries, So this was really getting out of the comfort zone. So I would say it's really about converting it, creating one, but I would say it's more than creation. Take anything that comes your way and convert it.
Interesting that you mentioned converting and just like trying to build on from that. Rudy, let me take this one step further. What are your thoughts about creating or maybe looking for further qualifications as you look to align yourself with future opportunities? Do you recommend that, or would you say it's about staying in the company, working really hard, and just making the most of what you have there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, first and foremost, okay, I appreciate the fact that we have some wonderful panelists here, who really understand what it is to go through a journey, okay? Because the reality is that the only constant in life is change, okay? The only question then is, how do we actually embrace change, okay? Do we actually move forward with it, okay? And go in directions that maybe we're not comfortable? Or do we actually, stay where we are and just effectively stagnate, okay? And so when you think about your career progression, okay, one of the most important things I think is being true to yourself and doing something that you actually enjoy, okay? We tend to do things because that's what our parents wanted us to do, or that's what, our friends down the road think we should be doing, or whatever, okay? There are all these external forces, okay? We have to understand what's important, okay? And my panelists have sort of identified that. You've got to be true to yourself, first and foremost, okay? And then you've got to think about, in your particular area, okay, what can you do to improve, okay? And that is a constant conversation that you have to be having with yourself, because, nothing stays the same. And in today's world, okay, again, depending on your particular industry, maybe going back to school and getting an MBA in a speciality is something which is important, okay? Maybe staying in the particular position that you're in, but then growing, okay, in that position through mentoring, and by the way, doing other things that may be, ancillary to your job and not necessarily focused on your job, but things that you're interested in, not-for-profit work and other things like that, okay? Those are things that also not only add to you as an individual that you can then bring back into the workforce and the workplace, but it also could help you to actually expand your own professional circles as well. So I think that everyone has to make a determination about what is important for them, okay, in their career progression, and whether or not doing some further educational aspects is important. I think learning, as Jarrad said, is imperative every single day. You've got to learn something new every single day. Whether that is conceptualized into a course specifically that you need to take, fine. There are LinkedIn courses, there are lots of free courses. I mean, we've been through COVID, and there are so many courses out there now that one can take, okay, whether it's languages like Reshma learning German, or otherwise for that matter. So, I think that we need to challenge ourselves to constantly try to improve and constantly try to see what makes sense for us individually. And I'll stop there.
Can I just add to, and I'll make it very quick. Knowledge is power, especially
Absolutely.
being a Black individual. And
Absolutely.
they can take any, the company that you work for can be gone tomorrow. Your job can be gone tomorrow, but your education will always stick with you. So I would say, I would always kudos individuals to really attain and push for more in regards to education and really increasing their bandwidth to kind of do more and see more.
Great. So in terms of pushing yourself, I'm going to direct this back to you, Jarrad. So in terms of pushing yourself, how do you effectively build your reputation and become first to mind for the best opportunities? Not the grunt tasks, not the tasks which any old Joey can do, the best opportunity.
I think first and foremost is understanding what excellence truly means when you're working. All right. Because I think a lot of individuals will say, excellence is synonymous with just, strong performers. And that's about it. Right. So, I mean, me growing up, I looked up, up to my grandfather, who was a janitor, and he said, keep your head down and work hard. That's absolutely the wrong approach, I would say. Right. You want to work hard, but the formula for excellence is actually performance plus visibility. Now, if you don't have the visibility, then no one is going to know, right? So it's really, really important that it's not just your manager that knows what you're doing, but other people outside of your remit knows what you're doing, right? So it's so important, to align yourself to mentors. And I never really had a mentor growing up, to be quite honest. Again, this is one of the mistakes I've made in my career. And when I have a bunch of mentees, I tell them, get a mentor. You know, I've always wanted to align myself to sponsors, which is a little bit different, but get a mentor. Make sure you attend your business resource groups. Really align yourself outside. It's really important to understand and get a circle of individuals that know what you're doing and what your contribution is. Because, you know, I've seen it happen over and over where someone is being put up for promotion, their boss leaves or gets fired, and then guess what? They're in limbo now because they have no idea what to do next because their new boss doesn't know them and their new boss is not going to put them up. But again, if they had the foresight and knew that more individuals need to know what they're doing, then they can kind of progress moving forward. So I really think understanding that piece of the puzzle where you say it's performance plus visibility equates to excellence, I think then you start to really figure out, okay, now everyone else knows what I'm doing. And then secondly, I would say some of the onus has to be on the company itself, right? You know, because there's a lot of times where strong performers, they decide to leave, and then guess what happens? Hey, you're a strong performer. We want to keep you. We want to create something for you, right? So I think, you know you were on a panel with Christina just before here. That's part of the Black Advocacy Program. Now, there needs to be more proactiveness by the companies to individuals to promote mobility. Now, whether that be creating databases with top performers or whatever have you, but there needs to be something that triggers mobility a bit more within the institution. So I think it's twofold. It's one from the individual, but also the company needs to do a little bit of better job. And I think we're all trying to do that a little bit more now.
Interesting, because like listening to that statement, I remember one of our previous speakers from a few years ago, Carla Harris, said that perception is the co-pilot of reality, and you kind of get what your perception gets you and not what you actually deserve. And for some people, that leaves them in the lurch, so to speak. So Reshma, from your perspective, how important is mindset? And like, have there been times when you've been pretty down, and how did you get over that?
A woman, I'm a woman, a dark-skinned woman, so imposter syndrome is my cohabitant, right? So let's start with that. And I mindset, and I like that you bring this up because, you know, a lot starts with our own self-limiting beliefs. And have I been there? Absolutely, yes. Have I taken any job thinking I can do it? No, all the jobs that I've actually taken up, it was thinking that, you know, I'm not good enough. Then you get to that position and you look around and you think, okay, there are people in the room who are above your pay grade, who are not as good as you. That's when you kind of start settling in. So one of the things that I'm not there yet, and to be very honest, and I don't want to give false hope to the individuals listening to that as well, that I'm not there yet, but, you know, I'm very conscious of that I have more power in me than what I believe in that I have. So one of the things, and just to add to what Jarrad said, you know, when you talk about performance and visibility, this is also what I call as personal branding. How do you personally brand yourself? And, you know, the personal branding starts with your own perception of yourself. So can I push myself? And again, coming from a very Asian background, I'm still very, very shy to talk about myself. And, you know, can I, to my point at the beginning, and Jarrad mentioned it as well, you know, getting out of the comfort zone. This is not my comfort zone to talk about myself. Can I do it now? Absolutely, yes. I know I'm uncomfortable doing that, but I know that is required. So this comes with the mindset of my own mindset that, you know, I would not reject myself first. Let someone else reject me, and rejections happen, and we are all people of color on this call, so we know what rejection means. So you don't have to say that, you know, so let someone else reject me. I'm not going to reject myself.
And look, I'm sorry, I just want to jump in here because that's just brilliant. Okay, you know, the reality is, okay, it's not about how we fall down; it's about how we get up, right? Because we're going to fall down in some way, okay, right? And that's one of the greatest strengths that we have is perseverance, right? And the thing is, you know, when you think about these two issues, right? We are all working so hard to achieve and to strive forward. We are our worst critics, okay? So no one can criticize us more than we're criticizing ourselves, okay? That's the first thing, okay? And so it's really important to understand that you are there because you are supposed to be there. You deserve to be there, wherever there is, right? But then you have to also now think about, going to Jarrad's part about performance and performance. And then, you also have to think about your relationships in the organization and who are you talking to, who's mentoring you, etc. Honestly, as a Brit that came to the United States, we don't necessarily promote ourselves very well, okay? It's just not something that we do, okay? But the reality is that you have to learn to actually work on that particular part of you, okay? Because self-promotion doesn't mean that you're arrogant or overconfident or whatever. No, it means that you understand what you're saying and you're saying what you understand, okay? And so it's really important for you to know that, yes, you have to work hard. That's a given, okay? There's no question about that, right? Now, what else do I need to do, okay, to make sure that people are seeing who I am and allowing myself to grow mentally as well? We've all been through a horrible scenario, okay, for the past 18 months, okay? And it's impacted us all, no matter whether you accept it or not, okay? We've all been impacted by it. And so the question then is, how do I now sort of come out of this, okay? What are the things I'm learning from this that I can help myself to be stronger, okay, mentally, but also be able to sort of tap into some of the, self-promotion aspects of my job that I need to also do as well. It's something that you constantly have to work on, especially as a Brit, as I say, in a large organization. That can be very challenging, but I just wanted to make sure I just threw that in there because I love what Reshma was saying. So thank you.
Well, I've got a few more questions. I'm going to ask one and then I'm going to go to the Q&A because I know we're running out of time. So it's great to hear, but you're all, even though you're quite senior, you're all growth mindset, you're looking to learn, you're looking to develop. But in your opinion, let's start with Reshma, is the skill set that is required to get into leadership positions differentiated from when you're actually in the leadership position and you're looking to actually scale, manage, or maybe even move further yourself?
Absolutely, because when you're rising, it's all about you. When you're in a leadership position, it's never about you, it's about the team. So completely different. And I think this is where a lot of people fail in terms of the transition, where you still focus on yourself, what's in it for me. And this again, I can tell you, being in a leadership position for the past 10 years, and I've made the mistake myself, and I have made it all about me, you don't get too far. You need to shift that equation to say that, it becomes about you when everyone else has succeeded. And leaders eat last. And I know Rudy can add to that. And I stop here in a bit. Leaders eat last. So it's really about making your team grow. So completely different mindset, completely different approach, where you detach yourself, you let go, and you empower the team and help them grow.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're only as strong as your weakest link. Okay, so the moment you actually get to that position where you are quote unquote leading, okay, you have to understand where your pain points are, okay, and make sure you're helping that individual or individuals rise up. Okay, because if one person in that house of cards is not strong, then the whole organization is going to fall apart, and you're the one at the top of the tree that's going to be responsible for that. Okay, and if you're not managing properly, there you are. Okay, so look, I mean, I think it's hopefully what you would have done as you are progressing is you're bringing people with you at the same time. Okay, and so. Even if you're not someone who understands quote unquote leadership per se, there are lots of books that you can read. There are lots of podcasts that you can listen to. And those are the things as well that if you feel that you're lacking in some of those types of skills, you can get the resources for those. But leadership is so important to be external and not internal.
Yeah, and just one little thing to add there, especially because I do agree with everything that Reshma and Rudy you've just mentioned. The only thing is that for individuals moving up and trying to identify leadership and identify leaders, there's a difference between leadership and those that are in a position of power, right? Because they're not necessarily always leaders per se.
Yes.
Right. So identifying the differences between the two is actually extremely important when you're trying to become a leader yourself.
Absolutely. That is critical. That's a really good point. Because look, the king might be sitting on the throne, but the power is behind it. Okay, so that's a really important point.
It's a great analogy. It's a great analogy. Right, I'm going to quickly throw this open to the Q&A section. The first question is actually directed towards Jarrad. You have been at JP Morgan for 25 years.
Ooh,
how do you find
it's speaking my age.
opportunities?
It's speaking my age.
you still have a youngish face, so it's all good. It doesn't matter about the numbers. You've been at JP Morgan for a long amount of time. How do you find opportunities to step out of your comfort zone in an environment where you've been for so long? Also, how do you recommend someone just starting my career utilize a mentor?
Yeah. So I'll start with the second one first. It's extremely important to utilize a mentor. You go in, you have monthly chats with a mentor. You have, and don't have one, right? You need to have multiple, right? Because in an institution like JP Morgan, the cultures are very different from, let's call it sales, trading, and I'm in research versus banking versus asset management. I think you need to have multiple individuals give you a fair amount of insight and guide you through. So it's really critical to engage with mentors. And there's a lot of programs that everyone is really instituting within their own respective companies to help individuals and guide them so that they don't make the same mistakes like me, as an example, in my career, right? And that's what I try to do. So then I guess the comfort zone bit, my job evolves every year. It's always something different. I always have to step outside of my comfort zone. I'm really engaging. I cover fixed income as a whole. So there's always things with emerging markets, developed markets, SPG that I have to step out of my comfort zone. But I would say the hardest part of my job is my second job, and that is promoting diversity. That's the comfort zone that I need to step out of, because I have to balance between what a solutions-based individual in the front office like myself is versus what things that have been in place in HR, and they don't necessarily think outside the box all the time, right? So balancing that and balancing very senior individuals is really taking me and stepping outside the comfort zone. And I'll be very honest, right now, as an MD, a seasoned MD at JP, it's really about using my platform to help others and making sure if I'm going to help others, others are helping others to create a true chain effect.
The next question is from Cindy. I have a mentor, but I feel I'm not having meaningful and constructive conversations with her. What would be the best way to talk to a mentor and get the most out of a mentorship program? Who would like to take that one?
I can take it, Dennis.
Sure.
I think the best way to get a meaningful and constructive outcome of a mentorship is to know what you want out of the mentorship. So when you say it's not meaningful or you're not getting the desired outcome, it's probably because you are, to my point earlier on the conversion, you need to convert that mentorship into something that is beneficial for you. So I would say, one, have multiple mentors in that sense, because as Jarrad was saying, everyone brings in a different skill set, but also identify what is it that you would like to get out of the mentorship. So, I just give a personal example of mine. There are things that for me, it's very difficult to do to the point of getting out of the comfort zone. This is where I constructively use my mentorship, where I actually ask for feedback. I actually ask how they have traversed, and stories can help. We all go through similar stories. We all go through similar journeys. This can help in terms of how people have overcome. So I would say define what you want out of the mentorship and use that in a way that you are getting the outcome rather than you leave it to the mentor to mentor you, which is very different. So you need to have that, create that pull.
And just want to jump in there as well, because I think it's important to also recognize that there may be mentoring programs in your organizations in which the person that's mentoring you doesn't necessarily look like you, okay? That doesn't mean, however, the mentorship program is not going to be successful. I've been mentored by a lot of folks, okay, that do not look like me, okay? And it's been a very successful relationship. Now, one of the things that you also need to think about is, and this goes back to what was said in the previous post about, you've got to ask, okay? I remember a young man saying to me one time, a closed mouth never gets fed, okay? And I've never forgotten that, okay? But the point is this, okay, to Cindy's question, if you're in a situation where you don't think you're getting something from your mentorship, okay, find someone else. Get out there and ask for someone else. Maybe even the mentorship program will actually assign you with someone else. Who knows? Because your mentor, okay, isn't going to be there to basically give you the book, give you the keys, okay? They're there to help you and to guide you and to help you understand how to navigate the organization. And that goes to Reshma's point, which is what is the mentor doing for you, right? And so I think that, one, you can always have a mentor that you may not think is giving you what you need, okay, but listen to what they're saying to you, first and foremost. Secondly, find someone else that you can actually connect with, whether it's, you know, on some sort of, you know, esoteric level, okay, and in that situation, that person might be someone that you can now ask a different side of questions to that you didn't get from your mentor. And the more people you have that you can do that with, you've got more mentors now. So you've got the original program, but there could be other ways of getting mentoring.
Yeah. And just one last point, there is a difference between mentors and sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just, it's really important to identify who is a sponsor versus a mentor. A sponsor moves the needle, right? You know, so if you're looking for your mentor to move the needle, the mentor is meant to help you move the needle and figure out a right pathway, but you have to get a sponsor if you want that person to move the needle. And so to understand the difference between the two is going to be very important.
And there's a couple of questions, but this is the final one, which I'm going to use for this session. You got your sponsors, you've got your mentors, and there's also people who speak to the value of having coaches. Have any of you used a coach? How can the value of a coach be amplified and be made more accessible to those starting out in their career?
I'm fortunate that, you know, my wife is actually a coach. And so I've been coached since I married her, which was 20 years ago. Now, whether I was officially part of her program or not is another issue entirely, okay? However, I actually say that from a serious perspective, I found out in my 25 years of being here in the United States that the folks that have made it, quote unquote, to very senior positions in their careers have had coaches. And I didn't know that. Okay, when I spoke to them, and these are people I've known for 20 plus years, and it's literally within the last couple of years that I found out that their organizations created a coach for them that has guided them through this process for the past 10 or 15 or 20 years. So to the question, absolutely, you need to get a coach. Okay, now, you're not going to get a coach when you start your career, okay? You're going to be in that sort of middle-level, sort of getting to the senior perspective of your career. Then you should be bringing a coach in at that point, okay? And I think that the mentoring aspect is the earlier part of your career, okay? And then the coaching is to get you to the next level, you know, in terms of the C-suite, okay? And that's when you now switch over from being mentored to mentoring other people.
Does anyone else have anything they'd want to add on to that?
I told you at the beginning that I'm learning every single time, right? You know, and maybe I need a coach. I've never had one, but it's interesting. I want to explore it now. So
it's imperative,
Jarrad, for being on the panel.
Yeah, it's imperative. It really is.
Reshma, is there anything you want to add?
No, nothing. I just want to build on what both Jarrad and Rudy said, just the differentiation between sponsor, mentor, and coach. And I think we get confused. A lot of people, you know, I act as a mentor, a coach, and a sponsor. And we all get confused in our heads between that. So mentor, I think we all have heard enough. Sponsor is someone who actually puts you up for the next job, so to say. And sponsors are typically within the organization, but as you rise up in the organization, it's also outside. So board of directors, for example, you know, recommending you for another board of directors position. These are all sponsors who just speaks out your name. Coach, and I have used a coach myself for multiple reasons. And this is like similar to sports coach. This is to actually make you better at something. So if your weakness is identified, and I've used a coach both internally, as in to Rudy's point, you know, organization has provided a coach simply because when I was put up for promotion for a role, I lacked certain abilities, and this is what the coach actually supports you. I've also used a coach on my own, simply because these are things I have identified as a weakness for me, and I wanted to get better. And just to share with the audience, you know, I was never good at public speaking. I could have never stood up in front of an audience and spoken, and here I am speaking with no fear.
Exactly.
Thanks to a coach. So yes, and my husband is not a coach, so I'm not as lucky as Rudy. But to that point, I would say it's imperative that you get a coach, because it's similar to the sports coach. If you want to get better at something, get a coach.
Fantastic. And that is a perfect way to end this session. Thank you, Reshma, Jarrad, Rudy, for your time, your insights. There's lots of people in the chat who are very grateful for this as well. We're now going to take a short break before we go on to our next session, which is about dealing with career setbacks and how do you navigate that. So thank you all for your time. I'll see you very shortly. It's been a great session. And yeah, we'll take it from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.